Thank you. And the next session will be a kind of interview that I will do with the 9th President of Israel, Mr. Shimon Peres, who has no need to be introduced here. He was Prime Minister. He was Minister since I was, I think, 10 years old in Israel. And he, of course, has his huge projects that he founded, like the research center, the nuclear research center in Dimona, and IAI, and almost everything. Mr. Shimon Peres, please come. Okay, Mr. President, we are here at the cyber conference, but let me, before we go deep into cyber issues, let me start with a few topics that are now discussed by the public. We heard now there is a huge discussion on the budget, security or defense budget vs. other needs. Now you have a perspective of 70 years. I assume it's not an old subject. Can you tell us something from your perspective on the way one can balance, or what one can do when you have to meet security issues or security needs on one hand and other social needs and other needs, health, on the other hand?
Well, I think you have to take into consideration both of them, but when you face a danger, you have to give priority to security, but don't endanger the others. We never stopped social investment, even when we had very large expenses in security. I learned the economy from the greatest economists in the world. His name was David Ben-Gurion. Why I'm saying it? Because he didn't have the slightest idea about economy. So what did I learn from him? I was his director general. I would come to him and he says, Ben-Gurion, let's do this and that. He says, how much will it cost? I told him $1 million. He says, $1 million? Where are we going to take the money? Okay. 2 weeks passed. I came to him again and says, Ben-Gurion, let's do this and that. He asked me, how much will it cost? I told him $50 million. Oh, he says, $50 million is nothing. If it was for something, it is cheap. If it was against something, it's expensive. That is the economy I have learned. Now, I want to say again, undoubtedly that we have to meet the needs of security, but we all the time find many ways how to enlarge it, by cooperating with other countries, by developing exports. Namely, it's not a simple proposition. And the army itself was a school too. So I think that this is a sort of a thing that you should sit down and really try to have the widest possible look. I want to add something else. We live now in a different age, totally different age. Dr. Yuval Harari, who published a book which is a bestseller, called it that today we have a one-neck humanity. Namely, we have two hands. So if you cut one hand, you have another hand. If we have two eyes, cut one eye, you have another one. But when you cut the neck, that's it. And there are weapons that are neck cutting, either by a knife or by a nuclear bomb or even by a saber. They can cut the necks. And that leads us to the necessity to fight war. Actually, war in the traditional meaning is disappearing. Because as the defense minister said, there are no frontiers. And actually there are two organizations. One which is in charge of security, and that is the governments, national governments. But one that is in charge of avoiding wars, and that is the global companies, the global countries. Because you cannot spend so much, and if you want to spend, you must have an income. And the global economy, which is affecting the national economy, doesn't have an army, doesn't have a police. We don't have a balance of power, we have a balance of strength. And their strength doesn't come neither from weapons nor from raw material. It really comes from goodwill, from innovation, for a different relationship. Now we have together to defend our necks. I'm saying it because today more than ever we have to join in the world to make the world secure, not only our own country. For that reason, a good mixture of strategy and policy is essential. It was mentioned already that to defend the country we have to join in people that previously were our enemies, like the Arabs. Why? Because it came out there are no longer two armies that one fights the other, but there are hundreds of terrorists that are fighting each other and are destroying the Arab countries. If I were an Arab today, I would say, who is more dangerous, Israel or the terrorist? From an Arab standpoint, it is clearly the terrorist. They destroyed Syria, they destroyed Iraq, they destroyed Lebanon, they destroyed Yemen, they destroyed Libya. They are the real problem. So that's a chance to work with them. So I would say, look, we have to prepare the future by investing in education and in social needs. Otherwise, we may wake up tomorrow morning, we will not have the advantage of the human quality. On the other hand, we have to be careful also not to ignore the real needs of defense, but to marry the defense into a larger prospect of peace. And many people are talking about, that we have to make regional peace. Yes, if we shall make regional peace, it will have an effect upon our overall budget and upon the military budget. And you have to combine two things, the immediate needs and the long-range needs. And something else, which today looks a little bit fantastic, far away, but I believe we are very near, more near than people think. What I learned from the very first day to this day is that what we possess as human beings are more than what we can produce as human beings. The qualitative edge is the things which are hidden in our bodies, and all the things that our hands produce. Because if it would be a balance just of what we can produce, we would lose. We didn't have enough people, we didn't have enough money, we didn't have enough machines, nothing. And if it would be a simple proposition, we would be out. What we did is three things. Number one, we invest in people. And Israel is a story of a victory of people more than anything else. You know, they were talking about two sorts of countries, the oily countries and the holy countries. We were a holy country. We didn't have a drop of oil. And we won over oily countries, because the people took out from themselves the maximum. And the second thing we did, we invested in the future. The future is education. The future is the social fabric. Nothing is just a matter of metal. You know, the distinction between software and hardware is artificial. It goes together. You must have a spirit, you must have a morale, you must have a policy. You cannot just be an installator. It's nonsense. And the third, we developed ingenuity handling the defense. There was an embargo against Israel, they wouldn't sell us arms. So we bought the machinery that were a surplus, they weren't considered as arms. We bought it and brought it over. We went first of all to communication. Israel started her outstanding advancement in technology by investing in a communication, because we want to have short lines and easy contact. So we have חיל הקשר, the communication army. We have had Tadiran at that time, which is to this very day an outstanding company. And we have to do it in a whole way. So I think that we have to come in a larger form. We have to participate in the global life, which is based on goodwill, which is a balance of strengths, not of power. At the same time, we have to keep very carefully not to damage neither defense nor education, because they are the same family. If you want to have a good defense, later on, you must have good people earlier on.
Speaking about investing in people and future, you'll be glad to hear that we had yesterday here a side conference of 600 kids. You remember the kids that you met here a year ago? Since 600 kids belonging to this program that was mentioned by the defense minister in high schools. They're learning cyber science, cyber technology, including, as you asked rightfully so a year ago, the ethics of it, not only the techniques of it. But you mentioned one neck, and let me go back, one neck, nation or world. Let me go back to another neck, and this is what we call the Islamic State, the ISIS. It's a different neck here. We are here in a cyber conference. And some people say, you see, cyber is good when you have to confront a technological state or organization. But when it comes to those jihad Islamists, it has nothing to do with cyber. Is it really so? Or what is really the relevance of this?
Look, again, I'm afraid some of us have an old look about it. You know, I was asked in the United States, what would I suggest to do with in Syria and Iraq by, say, an important people. I told them, I don't know what you are doing. I can't understand you. Is it in the American Constitution that the American army is obliged to decide who is the heir apparent of Muhammad, the Sunnites or the Shiites? Is that an American task? Explain to me. Why are you there? What do you mix in? Instead of it, I would recommend that you will go to the United Nations and suggest that the United Nations will charge the Arab League and the Muslim League to deal with the problem of Sunnites and Shiites. Let them do it. They have planes, they have armies, they have money. And they ask you, why do you stand aside? Ask them, why do they stand aside? Let's put an order. But it doesn't mean that I would leave the Middle East. And here I'm afraid about the experts of the Middle East. I think there are experts of the Middle East that doesn't exist anymore. And we said all experts are experts for things that happened. You don't have an expert for things that may happen. And look, there is in the Middle East the Shiites, the Sunnites, and the Muslim brothers. They are condemned because they don't have answers to the reasons that creates terror and brutality. The poverty, the ignorance, the hatred, everything in the name of Allah. You can cut a head in the name of Allah. Nobody stands up. But there is one thing in the Muslim world which for me is very encouraging. The number of young people. We have in the Middle East 250 million Arabs, the size of Russia. Among them, 60% are below the age of 25. And there you can see the changes. Let me mention one or two changes. For example, the Muslim brothers don't give equal rights to women. The World Bank just published a few weeks ago that would Egypt give equal rights to women, the GNP of Egypt would go up by 34.6%. It's more than all the foreign aid. The young people, students, girls and boys go together. The Arab Spring was interesting from the point of view that lady students, women students, participated like men. And you know where it's evident now? In Tunisia. Tunisia escaped the Muslim brothers because the young generation was already made. Now, out of those 250 million, 144 millions have already smartphones, mainly the young people. And if you have a smartphone or you are connected with the internet, you can see around. But religion can be sort of blindness. So with them, don't mix in the old business of religion. Let those young people come up and enter the age of science, which, by the way, when land can be conquered by armies. Science, no. It's only a matter of knowledge. And I know people will say this and say that, and I want to add to it all. While I know the problems of cyber, I don't think that this is what the French call the dernier cry. This is not the last call. There will be more, and the cybers will go deeper in the land and higher in the air. And we shall spend a lot of money, but it's a passing weapon. Because what we learned is by what I have started. What we possess is greater than what we can produce. I do believe that we are moving from technology to biology. Namely, we shall have a new internet and new computers, biological basically, because in our body we have hundreds of computers, hundreds, and the computers that we produce are primitive in comparison with the computers that we possess. You know, the IBM decided to build an artificial computer. So they wanted to copy the computer, the brain of a man. They couldn't, because the brain of the man has hundreds, if not billions, of neutrons. And to make a computer that will use or produce 100 millions, you need the sort of electricity the computer will burn down. So they went to produce a computer of the brain of a mouse. The brain of the mouse has 10 million neutrons in its head. The computer that makes it needs 3,000 watts to operate the 10 million neutrons. That's the maximum the computer can, otherwise it will burn down. Now, okay, 3,000 watts. The human being has hundreds of computers like it. You know how much energy we use to operate the computers inside ourselves? 6 watts. That's all. What does that mean? That we don't know how to use energy. We are at the very beginning. And I know that people, again, they're experts in here. So I say, look, we have to change our policy to understand there are two policies. One, to bring an end to war, which is global, because the world is made of one neck. And from that point of view, to answer the question, for example, if these two journalists would be shot by rifles, maybe people wouldn't be so shocked. But the fact they cut their heads, all of a sudden, make it so dramatic. And a warning, and even President Obama, that is very careful, and I can understand why, because he told me, look, it's not enough to go into a war if you have a just reason. Go in a war if you have a good results. Because just reasons and poor results are a mistake. So look, we have to enter this world. And we are, unfortunately, theoretically in, but in fact not, because we have our conflict. So we are among the 40 or 50 that support, but not in. The need is, you can't answer a financial question just financially. You must have a wide policy and a wide concept. And now it's time to make the decisions. You know, it takes time before you make a decision and the decision is being realized. Don't postpone making the decisions. And don't make future decisions when your eyes are turned backward. Make the decisions, look forward. What is before you? So I read about the cyber. I think it's a little bit of an exaggeration. There will be new technologies. It's important, and I'm very glad that we handle it and we shouldn't postpone it. That's not the last cry of technology. That's not the last call of politics. And you cannot separate between politics and strategy. They're interwoven. They must be harmonized. And we must understand that not everything can be achieved by power, as not everything can be defended without power. You need both. I am not a pacifist. But neither am I a person that thinks that everybody can be solved by force. I saw there are some Israelis who think we can overcome the whole world. Well, there are probably great saints, I don't know what. I don't think so. I think We live in a moving world, and we can move and have to move. And we have the talent to be in the front line, and we have to continue to do so.
Thank you. So if I take your first point, I asked about the Islamic State, and we all know that they amplify what they do by using the networks, the cyber networks, in order to, you can see it immediately all over the world, the YouTube videos, etc. And if I take your point, you say this same technology, the internet, can be used also as a kind of opportunity to transfer the right ideas to the third world.
Yes, no, I say everything, something else too. If you see those boys, they don't respect life. They're killers. They are terrible. But even in order to kill, for example, you need money. Dry them out. If you have mosquitoes, you don't have to shoot at every mosquito. Dry the swamp. We have to organize the world that they will not see a penny, that they won't be accepted at every place. We don't have to use the same arms, because they are really a real danger. They are killers, it's shocking. It reduces us to be under human beings. We have also some feelings. We have to educate our children. What sort? Why is it so dramatic? Because imagine one of our girls or boys looks a man with a knife and television and try to cut him. What can we tell them? We have to censor them from all sides, money-wise, social-wise, I think religious-wise, because they call the name of religion. I met the Pope. He says, look, is that religion? Why wouldn't you have, as there is a United Nations, to have a united religion? And tell them religion will declare what is religious and what is not. We have to attack them from different angles and not use just what is convenient for them. So I think to have an overall strategy, overall policy. And you have to put first things first. And you must also have a political view, because not to be an outsider in a new world.
Okay, time is running, so let me end by the last topic, and this is there is a tension between the need to protect our networks, the internet, etc., and the privacy of citizens and civil rights. And it's not a secret that this is a topic now discussed among the cyber community in Israel. And I hope I don't tell you too much if I tell the audience that I also consulted you in preparing the work for this. And I would like to hear, without going, of course, into classified matters, what is your opinion about how do we solve this tension between privacy on one hand, privacy and civil rights on one hand, and the need to protect our networks and cyber infrastructure?
Well, first of all, I want to say that the world became, on one hand, very global, but on the other hand, extremely individual. It's a contradiction, but it's also a completion, because we have to pay more and more attention to it. I believe that we are on a breakthrough in the domain of biology. The latest development, which is really fascinating, and apparently it's going to be very operational and very soon. Our scalp as human being is growing until the age of 6. Our brain is growing until the age of 23. At 23, it stopped going. The reason is that at that time, the early time of human beings, life expectancy was 30, 35 years. So actually, that was the preparation for death. The brain stopped growing at 23, and then you're diminishing. Now, scientists have discovered where is the center that stops the brain from growing. And they found the center. And now with this center, we can see already, and they started on mice, now they go on man, we can increase our memory by 25%, we can extend our life by 20%. As far as I'm concerned, I would jump to the latest. I don't like people who climb ladders. I prefer people who take planes and fly high. I mean, the fact that you have ladders doesn't mean that in order to fly a plane you have to climb a ladder. And I say this is a new technology which gives us an advantage. Because instead of storing everything in the technological computers, you'll have new storages, which today sounds like a fantasy. I would go for it. Now it so happened that Israel is really advanced in it, but we have to take into account every advancement has a short life. Don't you think that if you are good in one thing, you'll be good forever? You have all the time to make another jump. Today technology is jumping, not walking. And you must all the time aim to the height. I know people say that I'm fantasizing. Okay. I mean, it's too late in the day to change my name, so I have to follow it. But I believe it's not fantasy, and I think that Saber is for an intermediate time because it's too dangerous. As you know, people will not go and use a bomb again, Hiroshima. It's too dangerous. That's what I call the one neck problem. And those Daesh, they are dangerous. They cut necks. So we have all of us to come together, use all technologies, use all the money, use all the connections, and use the alternatives and start to fight them without mercy right away. And the more the merrier. Not forgive them. And I see some people say, well, we have to talk with them. If somebody has a knife, I suggest, if you want to have a conversation, look for somebody else. Don't try to have a dialogue with knives. So we must have a real tough decision with a vision, without fear. And I saw that you asked me, and I want to volunteer to answer it. Why is Israel has a chance to maintain a very respected place in the world of technology in the future? My answer is yes, provided you'll be surprised that we shall remain Jewish people. Why? Because the Jews throughout history carry something which is worth gold, and that is dissatisfaction. A good Jew cannot be satisfied. So he's all the time looking for tikkun olam, for bettering the world. Since there is no end, I don't think that we shall reach a point that the world will become perfect. Fukuyama wrote the end of history is not Jewish. Because in Jewish tradition, history has a beginning, not an end. We are all in a Genesis situation, in a Bereshit, not in an end. As long as we should be dissatisfied and try to make the world better and to tell our children to try and be better. That is the urge, the motivation for us. And by the way, it's costly. We paid for it. We created a great deal of jealousy, a great deal of opposition, a great deal of suspicion, as right now again we can see. But if the Lord would ask me if I want to be born again as a Jew, I would say yes. It's dangerous, but it's worthwhile.
Thank you, Mr. President, for your time. Shimon Peres, I forgot to say Nobel laureate, of course, and the greatest optimist here in Israel or in the Middle East. Thank you.
Thank you.